Hello, so my name's Keely, and today I'm going to be presenting on the July 20th, 1944 plot. So what it was also known as the July plot or Operation Valkyrie. This was an attempt made by German military leaders to assassinate Adolf Hitler, who was the Führer of Nazi Germany, in his Wolf Layer's field headquarters near Rastenburg, East Prussia. In present day, this is now known as Kettrizin in Poland. In this assassination attempt, the leaders hoped to also seize control of the government and rebuild peaceful relationships with the Western Allies. So a little bit of background information, which occurred prior to the plot being formed. So prior to this, between 1943 and 1944, Germany's military situation began to deteriorate. This resulted in the public's growth in opposition to Hitler. Since 1938, many groups had been planning an overthrow of some sort within the German army and in the German military intelligence organization, which is why in late 1943, plans for a coup called Valkyrie were created. In the late 1930s, assassination attempts against Hitler increased as a result of the military situation deteriorating. Hitler became increasingly suspicious, which resulted in him becoming harder and harder to get access to. He constantly changed his schedule very abruptly, which prevented a lot of the previous assassination attempts from happening. Many people involved in plotting met and exchanged ideas with civilian, political, and intellectual resistance groups in the Crusader Kreise and other secret circles that were formed during this time. But the plans that were developed between the time that these groups were created in about 1938 and 1939, they were aborted because of the lack of decision by Army leader General Franz Halder and Field Marshal Walter von Brautzig. And also during this time, the Western powers did not acknowledge Hitler's aggression, so they didn't oppose it until about 1939. Colonel Henning von Tresckow, who was a member of Field Marshal Fetters von Bock's staff, formed a new conspiratorial group in 1942, which is like the other secret circles that were formed during this time. Tresckow recruited oppositionists into the staff, and together Hans Oster and Tresckow successfully rebuilt an effective resistance network. They were able to recruit General Frederick Ulbricht, who was the head of the General Army Office headquarters at the Bendlerblock in central Berlin. Ulbricht controlled an independent system of communications to reserve units throughout Germany, which made him an important part of this group that was formed. And by adding this important recruit, they were able to create a viable coup apparatus. Tresckow and Ulbricht's first plan to assassinate Hitler and stage an overthrow was formulated in 1942. This plan was supposed to take place during Hitler's visit to the headquarters of Army Group Center at Smolstik in March 1943. And their plan was to place a bomb on his plane. This operation became known as Operation Spark. Unfortunately, plans went south when the bomb failed to detonate. They tried again a week later when Hitler was at an exhibition in Berlin of captured Soviet weaponry, but unfortunately that attempt also failed, and these multiple failed attempts really brought down the morale and faith. So these are a couple of the main leaders of the July plot. They included Ludwig Beck, which is right here, who was the previous chief of general staff and was a retired colonel general, Major General Henning von Tresckow. Colonel General Frederick Albright, Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Schenk von Stauffenberg, and a number of top officers. But the overall assassination plan was a combination of efforts from numerous groups in the German resistance to overthrow the Nazi government. They saw what Hitler was doing and believed that he was leading Germany into a suicidal war on two fronts. Several other leaders agreed that Hitler should be stripped from power, but didn't view assassination as the right option. For example, one of these leaders was Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who was one of Germany's most prestigious commanders during this time. And he believed that, with many others, that Hitler should be stripped from power, but did not believe in assassination. The main perpetrator of the assassination was Lieutenant Colonel Klaus Count Scheck von Stauffenberg, right here, who carried out the assassination attempt. So about the plot. So it began with Klaus Scheck von Stauffenberg leaving a bomb-filled briefcase in a conference room at the Wolfschanz field headquarters at Rassenburg, East Prussia. This is where Hitler was meeting with top military aides at the time. After leaving the briefcase in the room, Stauffenberg left and said that the explosion went off around about 12:42 p.m. After he witnessed the explosion, he was convinced that Hitler had been killed and flew to Berlin. Here, he met with the other plotters who planned to seize the Supreme Command headquarters, but due to sheer bad luck and improper timing by everyone, things did not go as planned. Hitler was not killed by the bomb explosion. He only faced minor injuries. An officer at the time in the conference room had moved the bomb-filled briefcase to an area in the room that was shielded by a large oak support. This movement of the briefcase shielded Hitler from receiving the full force of the explosion. Since there was uncertainty in the situation and the other plotters did not know if Hitler was dead, they waited for Stauffenberg to arrive in Berlin, which was 3 hours after the explosion had gone off. And by waiting, they had missed their chance, and it was too late. Rumors spread throughout about Hitler's survival, and this again dissolved the plotters' faith. At the Berlin headquarters, General Frederick Fromm, who knew about the July plot and even supported it, wanted to prove his allegiance to Hitler by arresting some of the key conspirators. These conspirators, such as Stauffenberg, Albright, Beck, and 2 aides, were either shot or forced to commit suicide. And over the next few days, Hitler's police worked to round up the remaining conspirators. They were subsequent to torture by the Gestapo to reveal their Confederates, and were put in front of the Volksgericht, which is also known as the People's Court, to be exonerated by the Nazi judge Roland Frissler. So 2 different sources state different counts, but Britannica states that between 180 and 200 plotters were either shot, hung, viciously strangled with piano wire, or hung on great meat hooks. But according to Wikipedia, it states that the Gestapo arrested more than 7,000 people, which of the 7,000, 4,980 were executed. And then at the very end, although General Frederick Fromm tried to prove his allegiance, he was eventually arrested, tried, and executed. So what went wrong? Well, on July 20th, 1944, Stauffenberg arrived to the bunker at Wolfschanz, and the plotters originally thought that the meeting would take place in a concrete windowless bunker, which would help ensure that the blast would be contained and the shrapnel from the bomb explosion would kill anyone in the room instantaneously. But the plans had changed that day, and July 20th actually turned out to be a very hot day. And to ensure greater air circulation in the room and obviously make everyone more comfortable, the meeting was moved to a wooden bunker, which was above ground. The room was also filled with many windows and other furniture, which helped reduce the energy of the blast and the effects of it. But even though after hearing about the change in location, Stauffenberg knew about this. He still believed that the bombs would be able to kill anyone inside of the room. Um, and then when he was trying to arm the bombs, he received an unexpected phone call, which only allowed him to arm one of the two bombs. This obviously reduced the potential for a larger blast by 50%. Since he was only able to arm one of the two bombs, he knew that to kill Hitler, he would have to move the bomb as close to Hitler as possible. So when he went to the conference room, he was able to secure a seat that was only one seat away from Hitler. But then he staged a phone call to leave the room, so obviously, so he wouldn't be killed by the explosion. But when he exited the room, someone took his seat and moved the suitcase farther away. So there was a lot of not good planning on a lot of the plotters' ends, which allowed this plan to not be successful. And then my sources. Thank you.